Welcome to my Wave 4 analysis and track ranking video. If you couldn't tell, I'm recovering from an unspecified illness, so if you appreciated the nice baritone narration of basic training, we're ramping up the bass hardcore for this one. I tried doing this track ranking live on stream a couple of times, but it never ended up coming out quite the way I wanted to, so we're gonna go fully scripted for this one. I'm gonna be going over all the tracks in rank order from worst to best from Wave 4, and before we get started, this is my own personal opinion, so if we disagree on something, please don't take it as an attack on you personally, because I value all of your opinions equally. Unless you somehow happen to think that DK Summit is number 1. Sorry, JP Givener. Anyways, I'm gonna try and keep this one fairly concise since I've already given all my detailed thoughts in each of the corresponding basic training videos. But make sure to watch to the end because I am gonna summarize my thoughts on Wave 4 as a whole and what this means for the tracks going forward. Now with all that out of the way, let's get started with number 8, DK Summit. I don't think there's anyone who's surprised that this one is showing up here, given that I've described it as being a track where there's not a single second of it that I find enjoyable to play. Now, one thing I need to point out is that my track rankings are usually based on how likely I am to pick the track online, and in that respect, this course should be ranked higher than it is, since I would choose it over some of the more highly ranked courses. But that's really only because I've spent so much time trialing the course that I tend to place pretty highly even when I have some major mistakes that happen in my runs. The thing is though, even though I am likely to pick this track online, it's easily the most broken track across all waves of the DLC, and it's honestly my least favorite track in the entire game. This is primarily due to the two half pipes. I've seen clip after clip after clip on Twitter of people flying clean off the half pipe and ending up halfway back on the track, and I even have a clip from my own gameplay on my Twitter. Anyways, it's clear that no one at Nintendo spent any amount of time playtesting this track, and it's honestly so bad that before I time trial the rest of the tracks in the wave, this one pretty much killed any enthusiasm that I might have had for future waves of the DLC. But like I said, we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves here. So let's talk about number 7, Singapore Speedway. Alright, put down the pitchforks for a second and hear me out. I have a pretty big bias against front-running courses when it comes to playing online, because if anything bad happens to you at pretty much any point in the run, it's like you might as well just leave and find another lobby. The exception here is if the track has some really tight soft drifts or other advanced strats like on Wario Stadium, where mastering the track is enough to compensate for those occasions where you do get Mario Karted early on in the race. But Singapore Speedway basically has none of that. It doesn't even really have any noteworthy shortcuts at all, which pretty much makes me avoid this track like the plague when it comes up online. The other thing I'm not a huge fan of is the fact that the first 10 or so seconds of sections 1 and 2 are made up entirely of one long straightaway, such that when played optimally, it requires you to snake drift back and forth from left to right. Overall, it's just not a particularly satisfying way to play for me. Now, at the very least, there's nothing really broken or weird about the track unless you count the awkwardly angled pool section that can cause you to get screwed up when trying to drift through it, but in that respect, it's not like the track is terrible or anything. Like I said before, it's just not really my cup of tea when it comes to online play, or even really for time trials. That being said, the vibe of the course, and in particular the music, is absolutely amazing. It's probably one of my favorites in the entire game, which, you know, is the reason I use it whenever I need to play some hype music in my videos. Number 6, DS Mario Circuit. Okay, seriously, put the pitchforks down. Let me explain myself for a second here. The course itself is pretty straightforward, with, once again, not very much in the way of advanced strats that you can use online. The thing it does have is the mushroom shortcut, but here's the thing. This shortcut needs to be taken in a very specific way, otherwise you'll get flung into another galaxy when coming out of it. Normally I'd find stuff like this entertaining or fun, but after the gauntlet of DK Summit, Yoshi's Island, and Bangkok Rush, all of which have design decisions that made me want to pull my hair out, I just didn't understand why they needed to seemingly go out of their way to make this shortcut feel particularly janky. It was annoying enough that I almost just gave up, took the L, and said, hey everyone, go watch the world record to figure out how to do this properly, which is something I haven't done since my Big Blue 200cc video when I first started putting these guides together. But once you learn how to do the shortcut, it's really not that bad, and I actually do enjoy the course quite a bit. And aside from that, there's not really that much else to talk about with the track. I do like that there are actually shortcuts, and the ending hairpin makes bullet bills feel particularly powerful here, but in the grand scheme of things, it just feels kind of like a fairly uninspired mashup of other more interesting courses. Now what I will say is I've seen a lot of people in my Discord who seem to really love this track, so if you really enjoy it, let me know why down in the comments and if you think I'm just being totally off base here. Number 5, Bangkok Rush. This is another one where my opinion changed a lot since working on basic training, and I promise that after this one it's all, well, mostly positive vibes from here on out. Let me just say that in general, the track is really a lot of fun to play. It's kind of like what I wish Singapore Speedway could have been, in that it's a track that favors front running, but between the first half of Section 1, the portion of the track before the glider on Section 2, and the super bounces in Section 3, it actually rewards you pretty heavily for learning how to play it properly. Really the only reason I have this course as low as I do is that the turns going into and out of the monorail portion of sections 1 and 3 have these little curbs that can randomly decide to actually act like curbs from time to time, which causes you to get flung way off the optimal line if you hit them improperly, but it's never really clear to me on any given attempt why this happens. That, coupled with the stairs at the start of section 1, once again make this a track where it seems like the developers kind of went out of their way to throw in jank where it has no business being. Now look, I'm not trying to be a hater here, and even I have to admit that my gripes with this course are really not that big of a deal. But here's the thing, when you have a track that's made up of 3 identical laps like Hyrule Circuit for example, you only have to design 30 to 45 seconds of interesting gameplay. With sectional tracks like Mount Wario, Big Blue, N64 Rainbow Road, and pretty much all the city tracks, all 3 sections need to be designed well, because a single bad section can pretty much throw off the vibe for the entire track. And that's just kinda what happened to me here. Again, it's not that I think the whole track is bad, it's just a couple of admittedly minor nitpicks that cause me to pick random when I see it show up on Worldwides. But now we are moving into the top half, let's kick it off with number 4, Riverside Park. Yet another track where time trialing it has changed my opinion quite a bit, but this time for the better. The track was really boring when I first started playing it, and even through basic training I was being kind of a hater, but it's literally the only track in the wave that doesn't have any design choices that make me wonder why the devs hate time trialers so much. So that's gotta count for something, right? That being said, the track is really short, and I still do think that it doesn't have a lot going for it, but it does have a couple of good shortcuts, and I would be remiss if I didn't point out that the music is awesome, and it's the best looking track that we've gotten so far in the DLC. And like I said, given the context of the other tracks in Wave 4, I feel like the simplicity of Riverside Park is actually one of its strengths, since it's a track that you can just kinda go on autopilot for and enjoy it for what it is. Number 3, Waluigi Stadium. You know, I really wanted to hate this course when I first started playing it. It's really confusing to learn the optimal lines, the Shroomless shortcut is fairly inconsistent, and the half pipe is a thing that exists, but I just enjoy playing the track so much. This is one of only 2 tracks in the wave that I found myself repeatedly coming back to so that I could try and improve my times, even though most of the time when things go wrong, it kinda feels like it went out of my control. What's funny though is I've spent so much time on this track that when it does show up online, I tend to straight up dominate, but I'm sure that's gonna stop being the case in about a month once everyone's learned how to play the track properly. I also have this one ranked pretty highly because out of the 4 or so courses with half pipes, this is the only one that does them right, in the sense that there is a fast and consistent way to use the things to your advantage to absolutely haul ass. Number 2, Amsterdam Drift. You know how I said that city courses need to have all 3 sections designed well in order to not just feel like an absolute chore to learn? Well, that's Amsterdam Drift. This is probably my 3rd favorite city track in the game after Sydney Sprint and London Loop. The course is like the polar opposite of DK Summit in that I pretty much enjoy the entire thing. Aside from the music, which is just... damn. But yeah, in section 1 there are a lot of tight mini turbo tricks off the molehills. In section 2 there's the underwater bit, which is another example of intentionally designed jank, but like Mario Circuit, it's not super hard to navigate once you know the strats. And while section 3 doesn't have anything particularly memorable outside of the pretty cool mushroom shortcut, it just feels fun to drive, and learning the ending bit properly can really help you catch back up in a pinch. Number 1, Yoshi Valley. Alright. Anyone who's been following my Twitter is probably really confused by now, but I promise you that I'm not doing this track ranking in reverse order. I do actually think that Yoshi's Island is my favorite track in Wave 4. Yes, I still think the question mark box being literally impossible to hit for 15% of the cycle is one of the worst design choices in the game. However, I found that it really doesn't impact me that much, if at all, just because of how I am at the course now. During time trials, I've gotten good enough at the track that I basically never miss it on lap 1 anymore, and this freed me up to actually learn how to do the glider vectoring, which makes me feel more like a Mario Kart god than pretty much anything else in the game. And online, the question mark box makes Yoshi's Island a strategically very interesting track because it forces you to think about whether or not you want to actually hit it and open up the cut for people in front of you or behind you. And even aside from all that, the rest of the course just feels really good to drive on. There's some cool ramp straps towards the start of each lap, the mushroom cut needs to be taken kind of specifically, but not in a way that feels like it's actively trying to rob you, and if nothing else, all the fan service from the Yoshi coins, to the music, to the victory fanfare, just make it one of the most kick you in the face with nostalgia and happy childhood memories tracks that I've ever played. Now, it's not my favorite track in the game, and I know that I'm being a bit hand-wavy here, but I just find myself picking this track almost every time it shows up online. And it's so great that even my 5-year-old has started time trialing it to try and figure out how to hit that box, so that's gotta mean something, right? But are any of you enjoying this track as much as I am? Sound off in the comments, because this is one track in particular that I'm super interested in hearing your thoughts on, because as far as I can tell, it's one of the most polarizing courses in the entire wave. So those are all my thoughts on each of the tracks. I want to close out the video by talking a bit about Wave 4 as a whole. This is a really polarizing wave for me. The good tracks are really good, but the stinkers really stink. It feels like this wave in particular was rushed to release a lot more than some of the previous waves, and a lot of it feels really half-assed. If I were to rank each of the individual waves, I'd say probably from worst to best that it's wave 2, then wave 4, then wave 1, and wave 3, so yeah, it's safe to say based on this that I'm not taking back anything I said in my why I'm not hyped for wave 4 video, which you should definitely check out after you're done with this one. But let me know how your rankings look, both for the tracks in wave 4 and for the waves themselves. Thank you all for taking the time out of your day to watch this video, and as always, I will see you in the next one.